You're watching 12 WKRC TV, a new generation of news. 12 Newsmakers starts now.
Good morning and welcome to Newsmakers. Nothing is more important to a family than the place it lives. For 12,400 people in Hamilton County, home is one of the 6,750 rental units owned and managed by the Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority, the CMHA. In the last 2 decades, beginning with sweeping policy changes and drastic budget cutbacks during the Reagan administration, public housing in the United States has undergone a fundamental transformation. In Cincinnati, CMHA has tried to systematically track the impact of those changes on the makeup and attitudes of its residents. The latest survey was just completed. To discuss the results of that survey and the general state of public housing in Cincinnati, I am joined this morning by Don Troendle, the Executive Director of Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority. Don, welcome back to Newsmakers.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good time, not just because of the survey, but also because of some real interesting progress being made in the West End, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. On this survey question, you do this regularly as I understand, since 1995. Is that correct? You keep surveying your residents?
Yes, because that way not only can we see what the current perceptions are of residents and CMHA's delivery of service and its neighborhoods, but also see what the trending data provides.
Well, let's take a look at a couple of those results. In terms of the demographics of the people who live in public housing, one of the things that I found interesting, it looks like since the beginning of these surveys back in '95, significant increase in income. People's resources have increased, which, you know, from a perspective of low-income people, that seems like it ought to be important, is it?
Well, it is important. Having mixed income communities, having our communities share in the economic change that took place in this country, and also CMHA, you know, contrary to the stereotype, we serve low-income working families and house thousands of low-income elderly. And so many of the stereotypes about public housing simply aren't true. That our population that we serve are families that are out there working and raising their family, and in most cases are very successful in those endeavors.
In terms of, what was it, 6,750 rental units or so, how many of those, I mean, I know a certain percentage are for senior citizens, but what percentage have one or two parents and children in them, you know, a family unit as we would traditionally describe it?
Oh, I would just say that over 4,000 of those households that you've included in that number are families.
Okay, with children. So
yes.
This is okay, significant. And those are people who are out working and their incomes have improved over the last 5 years.
Yes.
What about attitudes? What about attitudes of people who live in your housing units about their own unit and about the neighborhoods they live in?
Well, as the 6 years of surveying clearly demonstrate, there's a very, that people feel positive about their neighborhoods. They feel positive about the unit that they live in, and those trends have really been very positive. And so, to me, the study was very revealing and has really helped us chart the fundamental changes that we've made at CMHA by improving the rental product that we offer to families and elderly households, and looking at the kinds of supportive services that we provide, from the deal primarily with academic achievement for children and jobs for families. And those supportive services, those amenities that we provide as part of the rent, have really helped people feel positive about what's happening in their household or in their neighborhood.
Well, you know, one of the things that to help reinforce for those of us who don't live in that sort of situation, that, as you say, as part of the rent, there are educational programs that are offered. There are job training programs. This is seen not just as a housing unit, but as a total community responding to a set of community needs. And that's awfully important, especially in this whole environment around the change in welfare, too.
Well, and I think that's been a real change. I mean, we've seen dramatic changes in the percentage of families working And if we can provide support to that family so that when they are working after school's out, that their children are in after-school programs, and if we, we've set up many programs from that are tutorial that deal with Sylvan Learning, Kuman Math, and we have built learning centers in our apartment communities. Have 2 more that we're building now to actually have our after-school programs and our adult programs in high-quality facilities. But again, it's an amenity that allows us to create greater stability in the neighborhood by giving people good value for their rental dollar. So it's a good business practice for us. It stabilizes not only our apartment communities, but it stabilizes the school, it stabilizes the relationships between other entities, whether it's the police department or other service providers in the neighborhood.
One of the issues that, in the survey tracks people's satisfaction with their own living unit, but also their perception of satisfaction with the neighborhood they live in, the community they live in, which is also on the rise. But what about, that's perception, but what about issues around crime, around drug use, around the sorts of things that if you just listen to the nightly news may be the only perception that a lot of people have of public housing? What's the reality that's happening there in terms of those kinds of problems that you face in some of your areas?
Well, I think that people's perceptions in many cases are based upon factual change. And in this case, crime rates in our largest apartment communities, depending upon the community, have dropped 60 to 80% in Part 1 crime, serious crime. Those really impact people's sense of safety, control, and expectation of what they can achieve.
Why have those dropped so dramatically? Is it because the economy has gotten better, or is it because of change in policy and program?
I think it's all of the above. The American city, the comeback of the American city, and people's perception of what they can accomplish through many, many changes, I think, have led to that. The other thing is that the Housing Authority, CMHA, pursued a whole series of programs that dealt with crime prevention through environmental design that some people may know as defendable space, whether it's lighting, whether it's working with the police department, whether it's holding families accountable, whether it's better reference checks as families apply, and as we determine their eligibility for public housing. It's all of those things. I don't think it's any one thing. It's not 10 things. It's the huge investment that CMHA has made in improving its apartments, and in certain cases at Lincoln and Laurel, taking down buildings that are functionally and physically obsolete and replacing them with the kinds of amenities that families want today.
That seems like a nice place to sort of slide in, and let's talk a little bit about Lincoln and Laurel and what's happening there. If you have not had the chance to ride through the West End recently, you might not realize that much of the city's public housing built in the early 1940s is coming down as part of what is called Hope 6 program. Much of the Laurel homes in Lincoln Court, which stretch out along Ezra Charles Drive, is falling to the wrecking ball. In its place will come not just new buildings, but a very different type of community reflecting 60 years of experience with trying to build healthy communities by public housing in the United States. We're going to be able to show a couple of more images of what's coming under Hope 6. You've been on the show to talk about Hope 6 before, so I don't want to go over all of this, but what are the essential characteristics of this new style of community that you're building?
Well, I think there are really 3 parts to it. Number one, mixed income. For too long, public housing, when people's incomes and financial options increased, they left the neighborhood. And so neighborhoods became very destabilized. And in this case, by creating a rental amenity that's high quality, market rate, that families can choose to stay or will choose to stay, and that not only supports the effort financially in allowing you to build a higher quality product, but it also creates just the stability that I mentioned. But the other part of this is dealing with that mixed income approach, creating home ownership in the neighborhood also, as yet another means to create stability.
So that in the area that is now Laurel Homes and Lincoln Court, new communities are going to be new buildings will be going up. And to make this clear, that when people look at that area in the future, some of those will be privately owned units. Is that correct?
They're all privately owned. That's part of the mixed financing method. So they'll all be privately owned. Of course, the Housing Authority is a partner in that endeavor, but they will be privately owned, allow us to take advantage of one financing tool, tax credit, low-income tax credit. So, but part of the units are market rate rentals, part of the units are market rate home ownership. And so the 1,100 units of new housing, with 250 of those being home ownership, really do take market forces and introduce them.
Okay, so 250 out of 1,100 will be people owning their own homes, living there, and that really does change the dynamics in a community, or hopefully change. Is this what's happening in Cincinnati with this? Is this different than what's happening in other places, or is this happening across the country?
It's happening across the country. What happened is that Congress made a determination that there were 100,000 units of public housing in this country that were physically and functionally obsolete, that were stuff that was built with the shared hallway, too dense, too small. I mean, when this stuff was created, you know, we didn't have the kinds of, I mean, just imagine the difference in electrical system. You know, we didn't have central air conditioning. We didn't, I mean, or didn't have air conditioning. So there's been, these properties, you know, for many years were rehabilitated, and we rehabilitated some at the corner of Lynn and Liberty and at Laurel, and those units are, you know, it was a very good design, but it had the limits of the existing building. And so in this case, creating re-establishing the neighborhood, this apartment community back to the neighborhood by putting in streets and really opening it up so that people have their eyes on the street, and just today's kind of design techniques.
You know, one of the things about this is you've gotten a Hope 6 grant for Lincoln Court, a Hope 6 grant for Laurel Homes, as I understand it. How many federal dollars, what are we talking about in terms of total investment here?
And though from HUD, 66 million.
Okay, 66 million. We now have a new administration in Washington. Any indication of where the Bush administration stands on the future of public housing?
Well, I think that, you know, the traditional programs, they have their funding proposal that came out about a month ago for operating subsidy maintains that, you know, it's too early to tell in many cases, but there were some real serious threats to the industry. The drug elimination program that we talked about, many of the trends that have happened with academic achievement, the way that we pay for that is through this federal grant that provides us. We pay $600,000 for increased security in our apartment communities, and $200,000 in our elderly buildings. That funding source, which is $1.5 million a year, is proposed to be eliminated. And to me,
why?
Well, just as a budget cut. I mean, to free up money for other programs. But it's been the most successful program that HUD has ever created that deals with public housing. And this huge drop in crime rates, the huge drop throughout the country in crime rates that cities have been really fueled by this program that has been very, very successful. So the loss of that program. We also talked about the capital reinvestment that CMHA has made back into its communities. That program is also proposed to be cut some, not eliminated but so, you know, it's early in the budget process, as you know. It goes on until October 1st, but hopefully the new administration will learn how successful these programs have been.
What about Hope 6? Is that anything? Is that going to be an ongoing program? Do you have any indication whether the new administration supports this sort of approach to redoing public housing? And does it matter to you because you've already gotten your funding for Laurel Homes and Lincoln Court?
Well, it matters because the perception that the nation has of public housing has to change, and it changes by when this program was created by Congress. It had a 10-year lifespan, and next year's the last year of the program. So Congress will have to decide whether to reauthorize the program, and it matters because we have another apartment community, English Woods, that is functionally and physically obsolete and needs to be replaced, and we are planning to submit an application next year and are hopeful that we can work with the community over the next year to put together a good application to fundamentally change that part of.
So the models that you're developing and implementing at Laurel Homes and Lincoln Court, you want to take to other facilities that you own as well, and continue to do the same thing but that Hope 6 has to be renewed.
Well, Hope 6 needs to be renewed, but independent of Hope 6, we're doing it anyway. We have a real estate in Price Hill that we tore down some obsolete apartments, and we're rebuilding there. We're in the design phase now, which is going to be a mixed income community also.
That's a constant theme in all the new developments, right?
Yes, and we've been funded by Hamilton County and have done a fair amount of acquisition outside of the city, and our Section 8 program serves over 6,000 households, and so, you know, it is a constant theme.
You know, there has been, on that particular point, that besides the change of these large housing developments, putting more low-income people out into scattered site residences, either small apartment buildings or small homes that you end up owning and then leasing to people. How much dispersal has there been? How many people are now out in those kinds of units?
Well, units become locations somewhat static, and so when you have 60 years of ownership that's primarily been inside the city, you know, it takes time to, you know, to invest and purchase units outside, and as you know, many of the things that limit that. But the rental assistance program uses the private market, private ownership, and pays part of the rent based upon the family's income. That's a much more fluid program, and we've had some very good successes there. We're finding a majority of the people that rent go to non-low income neighborhoods, and, you know, it creates a little tension in the community.
And I was going to get to that, and we're almost out of time. We got less than a minute. Are there programs to help the people who move to those non-low income communities and maybe the neighbors who live there already to try to learn to work with this new situation?
Well, there are programs, and we have a 5-year program that's been ongoing that really works with the families very intensely, helps them consider new neighborhoods and deals with their issues as they move to new neighborhoods. But part of this goes back to, you know, this is privately owned property managed by private landlords, and our job and their job is to enforce their lease and to be a responsible business person in the business of housing.
Don, thank you very much. We're going to keep following what's happening, and I encourage people to go and drive through the West End and look what's happening, because it is amazing. And over the next couple of years, that's all going to change its look, and I applaud you.
Well, and people can drive on Court Street right now and see new buildings coming out of the ground.
Okay, very good. We'll have you back.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. Mentoring programs matching adults and children are nothing new, but this past week marked the launch of a new type of targeted mentoring program. After the break, I'll be joined by the director of Friends of the Children. Pairing children with mentors is nothing new in Cincinnati, but a new program called Friends of the Children comes with some special twist. Welcome back. Friends of the Children was developed in Portland, Oregon, and has now spread to 6 cities. One of the things that sets this mentoring program off from others is that the mentors are professionals and will be paid. To discuss the Friends of the Children program, I am joined by Harold Brown. Mr. Brown is the program officer for College Access Initiatives of KnowledgeWorks Foundation. He also is a liaison between KnowledgeWorks and Friends of the Children. Harold, welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you.
I gave the briefest of outlines there. How is Friends of the Children, this idea that the mentors are going to be paid? Just describe the basic structure of this program.
The idea behind Friends of the Children is that a long-lasting, caring relationship with an adult will make a significant impact on a young person's life. And so we believe that this fits in very well with all of our goals of increasing students' ability to achieve, stay in school, and to be socially successful in school and outside of school. Friends of the Children will involve paid mentors who are going to stay with the child K through 12, really beginning in the 1st grade through 12th grade. And they will be spending at least 4 hours a week with each student. The mentors, or friends as we like to call them, are going to have about 8 students each. And they will have a relationship with the parent as well, but the focus is on the student. They will be working with academics, with social development, emotional development, and a variety of other efforts.
What kind of person do you expect to be one of the friends?
The interview process is pretty intense. We expect that the friends will be have a demonstrated history of working with children and caring about children. 3 have been hired already, and an additional 7 will be hired. Many of the applications involve social workers, teachers, and others who have demonstrated in their careers a real commitment to developing young people.
So these friends, these mentors, is this a full-time? This is a full-time commitment for them.
That's right.
This is a job. This is a
Exactly.
full-time job.
It is a full-time paid position, and the pay is commensurate with social workers and beginning teachers.
So would be what?
Roughly around $25,000 to start.
Okay.
Annually.
And the idea here is that you get intensive attention, but also long-term attention. Is this, in effect, a recognition that mentoring, as we have seen it in the city before, whether it's big brothers, big sisters, or whatever, that oftentimes those relationships get broken off after, I don't know, a year, 6 months, 18 months, and that's a real problem?
That's exactly right. The children that are going to be part of this program are going to be identified as the most at-risk children. And we know that from other programs and research that the presence of an adult in a sustained way over these 12 years in this case will have a far greater impact than a mentor who spends a smaller amount of time for a shorter period of time, as is common with other kinds of mentoring programs. And we also think that the ability of the mentor to get to know the student in a variety of contexts, both inside the classroom and outside the classroom, is also going to pay great dividends, much more advantageously than a traditional mentoring program.
Who's funding this?
It's a combination. It's a partnership involving public and private entities. The Department of Human Services for Hamilton County has approved a significant grant of almost $8 million over 5 years for the program. However, they're not able to provide startup funding. And so the KnowledgeWorks Foundation recognizes that this fits neatly with our goals of improving student achievement and working to develop young people. And so we committed startup funding of $175,000 to help form the office and get the program started. And the implementing agency will be the Family Service of Cincinnati.
I want to talk about KnowledgeWorks
Sure.
in another longer, intensive time on another show, but give us a short form. What is KnowledgeWorks? Because the KnowledgeWorks Foundation, by name anyway, is new to the city, or relatively new to the city.
About 2 years old. KnowledgeWorks is an Ohio-based education foundation, really the largest education funder in the state. And we are involved in a variety of initiatives across the state and now some nationally designed to improve student achievement, to affect traditional educational systems, and to remove barriers to education, quality education and post-secondary education.
So get back to Friends of the Children. This sort of hiring of the friends of these, you've done 3 already, you've hired 3. Did you say another 8 in this initial hiring? Is there another
7? A project
so there will be
direct
10 altogether?
Exactly. That's the short-term goal. Over time, we're hoping to have as many as 40 or 50 friends and up to 400 to 500 children over maybe the next 5 or 6 years.
Because each friend has 8
Approximately
children.
8. And so right now we've already hired 3, and the Family Service of Cincinnati is coordinating this. We've hired a project director to oversee the entire piece, and then in June, the other 7 should come on board. And then I might also add that the 3 that are already hired will begin working with children this month.
Okay. And what about the selection of children? How will that be done? Is it just Cincinnati Public Schools? Is it county-wide? What are we looking at?
Because the county's involved, it had to be a county-wide program. Initially, we've looked at Euler and Whittier schools in Price Hill. We're also looking at 2 other Cincinnati Public Schools and 1 county school. What happens is a combination of counselors, teachers, and others in the school will identify, based on several assessments and their own experience with students who represent the most at-risk population for abuse or academic.
Will they always start with children who are in the 1st grade?
Yes.
So a child who is in the 8th grade now is not going to end up in this
Exactly.
program. So you're going to start at the ground up and then continue with that.
Exactly. What makes this program unique is the long-term relationship, beginning in the 1st grade and continuing all the way through the 12th grade.
This may seem like a odd question, but in the 1st grade, can you already tell at-risk children?
I asked the same question upon learning about this program, and in talking with educators and counselors, absolutely. that there are certain behaviors and certain patterns that can be identified early on that are very good predictors of lack of success academically, socially, emotionally, and otherwise.
Okay. And do you think there's going to be any problem finding the necessary number of children? Is there that kind of pool of need out there?
Absolutely. There's no question about it that in basically all of our elementary schools, there is a significant subset of children who are at risk, even when they come to school, for dropping out and for underachieving.
Harold, great program. I just want to put up a website here, and for people who are interested in more information about Friends of the Children, you can check out friendsofthechildren.com on the web. It's about the national program.
That's right.
And I want to make clear that this is not someplace where you're looking for hundreds of mentors, so you're not looking for people to call in. This is a very selective program, but thank you very much. This is very important. Nothing's more important than our children,
right,
and nothing's more important than this kind of concentrated focus on those who maybe need the most help and can benefit the most. So congratulations, good luck, and let's have you back as this develops.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to meet the men and the women who are shaping our community for the future.